And we are live. Welcome to another episode of the SGGQA podcast. The SGG is because I am some gadget guy, and the QA is because this is where we pull comments and questions from all the videos that I produce on YouTube. I get hundreds of comments a day, and so I pick my favorite comments to talk about each week. We talk about the news, we talk about tech, we talk about all kinds of fun and cool stuff. And this week's episode could either be amazing or terrible. Because I have been on the go nonstop since around 3:30, 3:45 this morning. Because today is new iPhone launch day. And that means that I drove my butt out to a tech store to go and partake in all of the new iPhone-ness. And so I have a launch day. Almost broke it. I have a launch day iPhone 6S. Okay, I'm a little punchy. I'm a little loopy. That's apparently what this episode is going to be like. I have to start off by saying, sending a huge shout out to my pals at AT&T. They, for the last 3 years, have hooked up early access viewings, and they've made resources available for me to review iPhones where a reviewer like me, Apple's not really going to play ball with, especially someone who's not really a huge fan of the iPhone personally, though I try to be fair during my reviews. Apple has no interest in trying to help me talk about their products, but the folks at AT&T have been phenomenal in giving me early access. I had to drive out super early, so I was in my car at around 4 o'clock this morning, drove out to Pasadena, and there's an AT&T store in Pasadena. So rather than waiting in line at an Apple store, they opened their doors to let me come in and play early with preview devices. So this is actually supposed to be at a kiosk right now. So I really appreciate the fact that they're letting me steal one of their demo units. I'm going to run it through a bunch of tests, do my full review on everything about the phone, all of my reviews about everything that's on the phone. So again, I don't know that I'd be able to provide this coverage for you guys if it hadn't been for the cool cats at AT&T. So major thumbs up of glory there. But of course, today was all of the launch day shenanigans and excitement. And, this year was pretty chill. If you remember in years past, like a year ago, and I think 2 or 3 years ago, we had stories about people hiring homeless people to stand in line to buy extra phones so they could sell them on eBay. We had people like here in California, in Southern California, where fights were breaking out in line. And it really, I think, speaks to the fact that, first of all, the buzz around an S model iPhone just doesn't seem to be quite as visceral as the number, so like whenever the form factor changes, I think people get a little bit more excited because the phones look new. But me personally, I'm a really big fan of the S series phones because every single time a new iPhone comes out, there's always some kind of problem. The iPhone 4 had antenna gate, the iPhone 5 had battery issues, the iPhone 6 bend gate. And with every S phone that follows, they seem to do a really good job of fixing those issues. So I'm way more excited to talk about iPhone when it's an S iPhone, because then we get to see the refinement. We get to see how Apple has addressed some of those issues, and we get to see what new technologies are going to be kind of, coming forward, getting pushed into the performance, the usage of all these phones. And it's not just the pretty form factor change, but that's me. I digress. We're going to talk about first impressions on the iPhone just in a little bit. Got some housekeeping we need to take care of. We've got to talk holidays real quick. I'm going to blitz through this list because I don't want to spend too much time. We've got a ton of questions. We got some cool stuff to talk about. Today is, ready? Here's the list. Hug a Vegetarian Day, International Ataxia Awareness Day, Love Note Day, Math Storytelling Day, Tell a Story with Math, National Comic Book Day. I did not know that today was National Comic Book Day. National Crab Meat Newburgh Day. That shouldn't be a day. I don't know what that is. National Food Service Employees Day, National One Hit Wonder Day. Leave me a comment. What was your favorite one hit wonder song? I believe mine would probably be In the Meantime by Space Hog, a 90s jam, which perfectly sums up the sound of the 1990s. But I can't think of a single other song that Space Hog put out. National Psychotherapy Day. Today is Native American Day. So if you're Native American, today is the day for you. Go live it up, folks. Today is Save the Koala Day. Absolutely can back that play because koalas are adorbs. World Dream Day and World Pharmacist Day. And as I have a member of my family who's a pharmacist tech, if you go to interact with your pharmacist today, maybe just say, hey, good day today. I hope you have a great day, because they're going to tell you the same thing. You should try and express the same sort of sentiment of goodwill to other people involved in days that they are trying to celebrate for today. But I digress again. So immediately jumping into some comments from last week's show. Last week's show, I plugged, it was the 5-year anniversary of the It Can Wait campaign. And I got a comment about that. And then I was also trying to talk about sort of some of the haterade responses that we've been getting on certain stories that I've been putting out, especially when it comes to talking about brands. If I talk about Samsung and I have anything critical to say, I get death threats. If I talk about Apple and I have anything critical to say, then people come out and tell me why I'm wrong to criticize Apple. And so the first comment comes from Yorinash, Jurinash, and I probably butchered your name. But Yorinash writes, along the lines of texting and driving, there's a documentary directed by Werner Herzog called From One Second to the Next that is a chilling view of lives affected on both sides of accidents involving distracted driving. I don't really know a way to solve this problem of distracted driving, but that documentary should be shown more often in classrooms across the U.S. Maybe those plastic clings on new phones should show the face story of someone affected by distracted driving. And then he also writes, to end this comment on a lighter note, my 86-year-old grandma, originally from Belgium, is definitely not as tech savvy as your grandma, but she catches on pretty quick. When I show her stuff on my phone, she picks up the lingo too. The cutest thing ever when she says, you better Google that up, when she wants you to search for info on something. The coolest tech moment I've shared with her is being able to show her a neighborhood in Belgium on Google Street View all the way from Kentucky. So cool. Thanks for all that you do, and thanks for being you. Nash, thanks for being you, and thanks for dropping that amazing comment. So first of all, for addressing texting while driving, From One Second to the Next is an incredibly powerful documentary. And I was privileged enough to go to the LA premiere. I actually got to meet some of the people that were affected in that film. Some of the people, the survivors from distracted driving accidents. Again, someone looking down in a careless moment at their smartphone or at their regular phone at a text message and blowing a stop sign or colliding with another vehicle or running someone off the road. And listening to the families of those people affected and some of the people who survived but were completely changed for their interaction with a distracted driver. It is absolutely terrifying and completely heartbreaking. On this YouTube channel, I actually do have part of the Q&A that Werner Herzog had with the audience from the LA premiere. So if you're interested in that, not only do I recommend you highly recommend you show that movie to people From One Second to the Next. I believe it's on Netflix. I'm pretty sure it's still free to watch on YouTube. To share that with everybody, especially kids. Again, we can redefine the conversation as kids are starting to play with technology. This is an appropriate time to use technology. This is an inappropriate time to use technology. We don't need to just let them carte blanche, use tech whenever. We can control that discussion. We have that power, and especially as we're starting to try and instruct, slightly older kids on what might be required of them when they're doing something like operating a motor vehicle. But then also part of the Q&A is kind of interesting to hear Mr. Herzog's experiences in shooting the film. And you can catch that on this YouTube channel, on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/WomBagnall. And then also to address the other side of that was I got really upset about an editorial last week, which was telling people in a very condescending way not to buy the 16 gigabyte iPhone or to turn off 4K video because you just can't handle the discussion of how much space 4K video takes because you're just not smart enough, iPhone users. And I was really upset about that. I don't feel that's an appropriate way to broach this conversation. We need to start having those conversations with people where we explain to them what exactly is happening. And so I brought up the example, I'm really tired of people trying to act like regular consumers are mouth breathing, completely unable to dress themselves in the morning simpletons. And I made a quip about, my grandmother gets it, stop treating people disrespectfully and they'll understand better. And of course, that kind of goes hand in hand with other pieces of research that we've seen from education, where if you go into an educational opportunity and you're the instructor and you're being a jerk, the person opposite you is going to have a much harder time learning. And so especially as we are the tech elite, if you're watching this podcast, if you're listening to this podcast, you are probably tech savvier than most of your peers. So it's really on us. It's our responsibility to be good brand and technology ambassadors. And when I show someone something, they learn it. And it's usually because I'm excited and I'm happy to share that experience with someone who's really trying to better their technological grasp. They're really trying to understand something better. I spent most of the morning today. I spent the morning hanging out with a reality TV star, a couple tech bloggers, some AT&T employees, and then iPhone fans. It's not going to do me any good spread a message of tech while I'm trying to, like badmouth the iPhone. Well, I personally use Windows phones and LGs. Like they don't care. They don't care. All they hear is someone sort of talking down to them or talking bad about what choices they're trying to make for their own technology and their own usage and their own services and apps. So again, if we can get around all that, it's so much easier to actually properly instruct someone as to what's going on. If I show my grandmother camera settings, and I might have to be a little patient with some of the lingo, but she's not dumb. She's gonna get it. I don't understand this angst that people have. Like, oh, now I've got to play tech support with my family because they can't figure out that their storage is all gone. You're like, well, I'm sorry. It sounds like you're kind of the jerk. There's that really, I forget who said it, and I forget exactly what the saying is, but there's that saying of, if you walk into a room and you're surrounded by assholes, maybe you're not surrounded by assholes, maybe you're the asshole. So that was kind of my feeling on this guy's editorial for trying to speak truth to all those dumb iPhone users. It just completely grossly inappropriate. I also got a comment from Inner Ear Thing, and he says, I really love the effort to try and separate the brand from the person. That's very important. That really helps. Like you said, they're all huge corporations. They could care less what we say. It's the users that get offended, and that's not the intention. Well, usually winky face. I offend family members often mentioning something about Apple, as my nieces and sisters all use them. I have to tell them I mean the company, and with a device so expensive, they should be judging it more harshly, not giving it passes left and right. And this is exactly another thing that I was talking about last week, where having been a former Apple nut, especially back during the old Power PC days, the amazing dual core, dual socket workstations that were coming out with IBM processors, I hold Apple, especially back then, I held Apple, and I still hold Apple to a much higher standard. They're not the underdog company. They don't need people defending them, and they're not your friend. It's the same thing. Like Samsung is my favorite Android manufacturer, and this year I've had no problems talking about the things that make me a little anxious about the Note and the Galaxy S6 and the S6 Edge Plus. I've had plenty of criticisms about those things, and I've gotten some death threats from Samsung fans because how dare I besmirch their amazing brand. And it all kind of comes wrapping up into a conversation that I had on the iPad Pro, and sort of this new talking point from Apple users. Like, oh, it doesn't matter who had the feature first. It only matters that the feature works well. And I disagreed with that sentiment, and it sparked this whole huge nerd rage debate on my Facebook wall. But again, Inner Ear Thing, I completely agree. And I think, again, kind of coming back to my point about being the brand ambassadors or being technology ambassadors, I unfortunately, it's on us to make that division clear. Again, we live in a society where so many people define themselves by the things that they consume, or the things that they own or the things that they buy. You're a Ford family, you're a Chevy family, you're a BMW driver, you're an Audi driver. And these things start to inform your sense of style as opposed to complement your sense of style. And so for someone like me, who really the only horse that I have in this race is more competition, I want better competition, because better competition means we all get better products. That's really the main thing. I mean, I have my personal favorites. Like, I think Nokia hardware is amazing. I think Samsung is still currently the top Android manufacturer. I think Apple has a really interesting ecosystem of usability, and the way that they've streamlined software is appealing to so many people on so many different fronts. Very smooth UI. I mean, all of these things, you can kind of make little divisions for what features and services and products that you might enjoy. But ultimately, all of that comes back to, for me, is one day I'm going to have to use an iPhone. As soon as I'm done with this podcast, I'm going to be shooting on this camera for the next 2 days straight so I can get a camera review out to you fine folks. I can't really produce that camera review if I'm complaining, oh, it's not the camera that I'm used to, and the buttons are in different places, and I don't get how my hands work. Like, I can't really play that game. I'm not going to sit here and play like the biased blogger game, because I have to live with that thing. If I have to live with that thing, hating every moment of using it, I'm having a bad time. I get to play with a really expensive phone. I would like to have a good time doing that. So even though I'm pretty sure, I'm fairly confident this isn't going to be my absolute favorite camera of the year. Yeah, I'm sure it's going to take adequately good pictures and video. So I'm going to make the best of trying to compose video that you all are going to enjoy watching. I feel like that's a good compromise for all of us, especially as I know on my channel, most of the people that subscribe to my channel are not diehard Apple fans. I know a lot of the people who started following my channel started following because of Windows Phone coverage. So I think moving forward, at least we can all look at some of these things and learn from what companies do what features we might want to see in the future. I said what way too many times in that last sentence. Woo, that was a lot of talking. So you know what? I mean, we've already been kind of complaining. This is sort of responding to almost 2 weeks of talking about Apple keynote announcements and sort of responses to the keynote announcements. And now, we actually do have iPhone 6s here in the house. Now, last year, I focused most of my iPhone coverage on the iPhone 6 Plus, so the phablet. But you know what? I'm actually not that huge a fan of phablet. So this year, when I was talking to my pals at AT&T, I decided, this year I do want to focus on the regular sized iPhone. This is the form factor that I appreciate the most. I never really liked the 4-inch iPhone screens, but I've been a huge fan of that just sub 5-inch diagonal screen. I was a huge fan of the Samsung Galaxy Alpha. I thought that was a beautiful phone. I was really upset that Samsung never followed it up. I really wanted to see them do a follow-up to that phone, and we just never got it. And so, also, I know a lot of people on my channel have said very positive things about the Sony Z3 Compact. And I'm interested to see what the next Sony Z Compact is going to look like. But that 4.7-inch is the perfect screen size for me to have a reasonable keyboard experience and not have to dance the phone around in my hand too much while I'm sort of interacting with it. So already I'm kind of digging that. Build and design, we know what this is going to be because it's an S model. So it's not changed radically from last year's iPhone. If you were to hold the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6S up in front of people, they would have a really hard time telling the difference. Now, to make sure that people aren't trying to claim shenanigans on me, I did opt for the pink one this year because this is the new color this season. My web camera is not doing a very good job of showing off this color. This is the new color, and I totally called this for the MacBook when the MacBook got the refresh. The MacBook was reinventing the laptop. I called this in an editorial that every year now there's going to be some new color accent so that consumers can know very clearly, they can identify what year that product was sold. And so now for the iPhone 5S, they went from black to space gray. For the iPhone 6, they started going with all metallics with the silver and the rose gold. And now for this year, it's pink. So now you know readily that someone spent money recently, that they have this season's iPhone, not that old, busted last season iPhone. Again, I think it's just a perfect commentary on Apple's move towards becoming more of a fashion brand. But having played with it for a couple hours now, I've had my hands on this almost nonstop since 5 a.m. Having played with it, it is a smooth, sleek smartphone computing experience. I haven't trained a fingerprint yet, so I still need to play with the thumbprint sensor. That's going to be a big part of my review because I still think that the iPhone 6 fingerprint scanner is a step above what I've experienced on Samsung fingerprint scanners. I definitely want to play with the new selfie camera, see if that screen burst actually works for in any way for providing us enough lighting, enough illumination for our selfie photos. And then we should probably talk about 3D touch. I keep calling it Force Touch because that's basically what it was from the Apple Watch. And I know a lot of people have been really critical on Force Touch. And so we should explain. Force Touch is a new way. There's a sensor in this screen, and I'm probably not going to be able to show this off on the web camera very well. But there is a sensor in this screen that responds to the pressure that you press into the screen. So I've got here, let's just go to some random press release that I've got. And so if I press and hold, you see that message is selected, and then I push, and the little haptic feedback pulse pops up, and I get a preview of that message. And if I push even harder, it fully opens the message in my email. The other thing that I think is really cool about Force Touch is 3D Touch, is the ability to enable multitasking. So on an iPhone, if you double tap the home button, you get all of these cards. They look like WebOS cards that you can interact with different apps that are currently running. Come on, Go back to my home screen. Oh, a little iPhone lag there on camera. Look at that. Oh, it just works. It's just so smooth. I'm gonna get hate mail for that. Well, now we also have that force touch gesture where if I push into the screen and slide, I can slide between various cards. Oh, and I'm about to drop the phone. And I can slide between various cards to get to services that are running on the phone. So it's a different way to implement multitasking. So I know a lot of people's commentary has been focused on, oh, and you can also use force touch to like pull up menus on apps. So if a developer has built in a menu, when you long or force press on an app icon, it'll pop up a menu and then you can go directly to certain features of that app. I know a lot of people that have been sort of not complaining, but being sort of critical of Apple in a snide way that, this is these are features we've had on other phones for a while. In the smartphone landscape, we're watching Android and iPhone meet in the middle. Apple started out with a much prettier operating system, and Apple has been every couple of years adding more functionality to pretty. Android started out as a competitor to BlackBerry. Those early Android devices, those sort of Android prototypes before we had consumer releases of Android, were really focused on trying to unseat BlackBerry. BlackBerry was the king. You wanted to take down BlackBerry. Apple really wasn't a thing when Android was getting started. And so we had all this functionality, but it was kind of developed out of that old school idea of what a functional corporate mobile messaging device should be. Had all this functionality, it was kind of ugly as sin. We've been marching them in. You look at where Google is now with Lollipop. I feel there's a lot of pretty in Lollipop, but I don't feel that Android is Google has completely addressed some of the usability quirks and some of the fluidity UI issues that people can rightfully sort of complain about when they use Android phones for a little while. At the same time, as Apple has kept packing in more functionality, it gets harder and harder to navigate that much functionality with one button. You have a home button. So you can single press it. You can double press the home button. I think you can customize a triple press the home button. It's your fingerprint scanner, and you can long press the home button to get to Siri. At some point, you got to do something else. So either it's Apple gives us more buttons, which ain't ever going to happen. That's sort of a Steve Jobs, I'm sure, was written into his last will and testament. You will never add another button to the iPhone. Or you come up with gestures. And so Force Touch brings us better customization and better controls throughout the iPhone UI in a way that we wouldn't have been able to do without radically changing the design and doing things like giving us additional buttons. So I'm a fan of that. I like the gestures on the BlackBerry Passport, not the old BlackBerry, but the most recent BlackBerry operating system. I loved the way that gestures functioned on the Palm Pre. There are all these operating systems where I was kind of sad that they never really succeeded in the market, because I think they were really interesting experiments. And before we really kind of fell into this two-phone dichotomy, this Android versus iOS dichotomy, we were playing with some really interesting stuff that we're kind of getting some of it back, but not all of it. So I'm becoming a really big fan of 3D Touch. I like it. I think it brings something subtle, but it brings customization and controls to the iPhone that we never had before. And it's not something that I think is going to be difficult for current iPhone users to pick up. Because one of the beautiful things about 3D Touch is it doesn't change the basics on the iPhone. It's still the same basic iPhone. If you never interact with 3D Touch, your iPhone is still going to work the same way it always has. However, if you want to take your iPhone usage up a notch, you can absolutely start incorporating more gestures into your flow. And I think for iPhone users, that's a positive step in the right direction. I think that actually brings a new discussion on lifestyle and ergonomics to the iPhone that we haven't had for quite a while. Like, they haven't really done anything new like that, maybe since the iPhone was first developed. So this is something that I'm very positive on. And again, I mean, everything that I've been playing with so far, and this is probably going to be a major talking point in my full review. I can already kind of feel it. You get a feeling for how you're going to start talking about this stuff, and then you find evidence to confirm it. There's already some evidence in how I've been using the phone so far. This just further reinforces that if you're going every other iPhone, I think it behooves you to try and stick to the S devices. So everything gets cleaned up, everything gets more powerful. we're gonna, like I said, I'm gonna be spending the whole next couple days shooting on this camera. I want to see what the UHD and the 4K video look like off of this new camera sensor, and that to me is a worthwhile upgrade over just the form factor change that we got moving from the 5S to the 6. So that's the iPhone 6S in a nutshell. It's pink. I don't know that I'm cool enough to pull off pink, but we're gonna give it a shot. But even though today's events were a lot more chill, there's just something about iPhone launch day that pulls in new tech fans. I'm gonna kick over into screen share for just a second, because this is where I also get some of my best media appearances. Here, let me. I did some work recently with NBC, but this morning, it was all about ABC7 here in Southern California. And I was their tech expert to talk about iPhone stuff live on the air at 5:45 in the morning. I was camera ready at 4:45, and then talked with their reporters to tell everyone about all the new features. They called me a tech expert live on the air, which is always super exciting because I like it. I like it when people say I'm smart. I think a lot of people feel that way. So that was a really exciting way to kind of, start the morning and get the morning started off right. And then I also got to hang out with my good friend Pablo Ortega from Actualidad iPhone. And here, we were just sort of pink iPhone 6S pals for the morning. And rolling around the AT&T store, obviously there's way less activity. There aren't nearly as many people waiting in line. I think there were like 10 or 15 people waiting outside the AT&T store. But the AT&T crew was hyped. It's sort of a harvest season time for them. They've got all these pre-orders. They're getting everything set up. And there's just sort of a general excitement. And that kind of gets fed into by the rest of the media narrative. I mean, I think if Samsung could get after some of their user base like this, we'd probably see similar excitement there. But Apple's done a much better job of kind of cultivating, or actually just sort of playing off of their classic computing image, being the underdogs, into this new this new camaraderie between iPhone fans. So just a great way to spend the morning. I'm gonna send that last thank you, that last shout out to AT&T for hooking that all up, because I really did have a good time this morning, even though I'm stonking exhausted and I still have the whole day ahead of me to catch up with the rest of this. If I can, I'll pull those news segments. I'll try and share them on my YouTube channel, or on something like that, so that we can all partake in the fun that is me being live on the air. So just real quick, before I move on to some of the other comments and questions that we've had on the channel, I've got some comments from Stephen Ayers. We are ambassadors of technology for our family and friends. Use that power wisely. I do. I really look at our tech knowledge as being the worst superpower ever, or like the least cool superpower ever. But the way that we chew this stuff up, it doesn't matter what product. It doesn't matter what service. It doesn't matter what phone. It doesn't matter what tablet. If I'm in a conversation with someone, I can make them feel amazing about what they're doing, or I can make them feel really crappy about what they're using. I recognized this a long time ago, that I can be in the middle of a conversation with someone and I can point out something that I think is cool, and all of a sudden they're having a better day. Or I can be like, oh, well, you got that, then this is this, and you're dumb, and I don't even need to say you're dumb. I can just sort of imbue my commentary with that attitude, and they'll pick up on it, and then they're going to have a crappier day. And I think one of the things that's kind of a bummer is that people don't always understand or always realize the energy that they're putting out there. So I have this game that I like to play where I respond to people with the energy that they're throwing me. And then everyone thinks that I'm super hostile. Even though really, for me, it's like, no, that is exactly the same tone that you were just using with me. You were calling me out on my LG, or you were trying to talk crap about my tablet, or, oh, Microsoft, brr. And then I came back at you with that same vibe. And now suddenly, whoa, bro, why are you getting so upset about all this stuff? And you're like, that to me is also sort of the hallmark of that really crappy, cowardly, passive aggressive way that we talk about lifestyle brands that we identify with. Like, oh, I came in here to tell you that I don't like what you're doing. Whoa, why are you attacking me? It's the same idea. Like, I would never, as a Red Sox fan, walk into a Yankees bar and start talking crap about the Yankees. Why? Because that's rude and I'll probably get my ass beat. Like, I don't understand this fixation to this fascination. Like, I have to go to BGR and tell all those iPhone users they're wrong, or I have to go to Android Central and tell all those Android users that they're idiots. Like, I just don't get it. And Stephen Ayers goes on to say, too many come on, pop-up. Too many people treat tech companies like sports ball teams. Like, you can't be a fan of more than one company. And I mean, like, again, we can kind of see that same sort of tribalism at play in a variety of different avenues. I think at its most extreme, we're talking politics and religion. At its least extreme, we're talking what smartwatch you own. And there's like a whole spectrum in between, like what clothes you wear, what car you drive. And it's almost like those little lists that you develop and you write about yourself on Facebook become sort of your actual personality, as opposed to, I picked these things because they complement my personality. And he wraps that up with saying, every day is don't be a dick day. And I would like to wholeheartedly throw my hat in the ring for every holiday day that I go through on this podcast should be don't be a dick day. So moving right along. I don't think I'm allowed to sing any more of that song. I think I've already sung too much of it for the Muppets and stuff to send me a cease and desist. Also, kind of exciting. You can now sing Happy Birthday. The judge just ruled that you can't collect royalties. That's public domain. Hopefully that sticks and we don't see a ton of appeals on Happy Birthday. It's kind of ridiculous that a song that old and sort of nebulous origin could have been copyrighted. So moving right along. I just did it again. So I put out a video comparing the Note 4 to the Note 5. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, and I still continue to get I still continue to get a lot of really sort of impassioned comments, sort of talking about either how much they like where Samsung is going or some of the conflicts that Note 4 owners feel and whether or not they should upgrade to the Note 5. And so this one comes courtesy of Randy Morris. Excuse me. I've got like a stomach full of coffee just to kind of stay upright right now. I've been just basically dumping more coffee into my nearly empty stomach since 4 a.m. Woo! And Randy Morris writes, I certainly hope Samsung pays attention to the reasons people are not wanting to upgrade to the Note 5. Alienating a passionate user base was not the way to move forward. They are so hell-bent on following Apple that they are going to lose customers. Keep what was different and improve on it. Features that could be updated on the Note 6 make it an absolute must-have phone are 4K screens for VR, the return of a replaceable battery, micro SD card slot with faster I/O, retain wireless quick charging, and an updated camera sensor. By focusing on design aesthetics instead of what people purchased the Note Series for, they're heading down a path that will lose previously faithful customers. And I've heard this argument quite a few times. The thing that worries me about this argument are the people like us who care about form and function, but maybe put a little bit more value on function than on form. I feel like most tech companies, and this isn't a criticism I'm going to throw at Samsung, I think for the tech industry in general, as technology has become more of a lifestyle experience, as normal people have started using technology in every facet of their waking daily lives, I think companies are a little less afraid of losing us geeks. And I really think that's just sort of the truth of the matter. For as much as I might sit down and review technology products, I came from a background in managing a contract that supported Department of Energy facilities. Now, I've had my hands in the guts of computers since DOS was our primary operating system and user interface. I think companies today aren't too afraid of losing us. I think we're a minority of the population. I think we're very vocal, but I think we're only very vocal in an echo chamber kind of way to other techies and other geeks. That's where our biggest conversations and debates happen. But I don't think those debates are nearly as far spreading throughout the rest of the tech industry as they used to be. Back when we had Palm Pilots and Windows Mobile and the fights between those two camps, we just started pushing into smartphones with Blackberries and Palm Treos and some of those old Audio Vox, like the Blue Angel Windows Mobile phones. We had a lot of power because most of the people buying those devices were either corporate, people that really needed email for like banking or doctor style activities, or then other geeks. So if we really colored the perception of a gadget back then we could have a very positive or a very negative effect on sales. I think nowadays, someone is going to buy a phone as much for what it can do as they will for the brand that it represents and the style and design that it showcases. So you look at a phone like the Note 5 or the Galaxy S6 Edge Plus, maybe is even the better example. And it doesn't matter that it's more expensive and it has less stuff in it. It's the brand that person might enjoy emotionally. They might be a Samsung fan because they had good experiences with Samsung in the past. And then the style and design is very attractive. It is a very stylish and sexy looking device. And it gives off an amazing first impression when you pick up something like the S6 Edge. So while, Randy, I don't disagree with you, I do feel like Samsung does stand to alienate some of their customer base. I think Samsung is taking that corporate business risk decision on attracting far more people to the table with their fashion phones this year than the people they will lose from the geek community who might be upset about losing things like memory cards. I had a conversation with one of the AT&T customers today where they were swapping out a Note 4 and they were complaining about getting slow and getting laggy. And what's funny is that, I just updated my old iPhone 5 and you're like, oh, iOS 9 on iPhone 5 is not pretty, or at least hasn't been in my experience. And, you ask them questions about using that Note 4 and they complained about filling up the storage. So the first thing I say was like, oh, did you ever get a memory card for it? And it was like, that had never crossed their minds. That was not something that they got the phone for. They got the phone for the big screen. And that's really all they were focused on. They never used the S Pen. They weren't photographers. Like they had a nice camera, but they didn't really care about camera stuff. And then like other features that are going to be universal across all smartphones. Like, oh, I like to get turn-by-turn directions and listen to music over Bluetooth in my car. And you're like, okay, well, that's the kind of conversation I'm having now. So if that's really what they're using, then I think Samsung is taking a calculated risk on, like I said, on alienating power users. But there's so many more people that are looking at that large screen experience than there are people like us that care about every single little feature and spec. And that's kind of where this market is headed. And I think it's also why we kind of need to start this conversation now on what comes after the smartphone. I'll be way more excited about losing out on some of these like like removable batteries and SD card slots if companies would start giving me amazing augmented reality. Like put on some Geordie LaForge visors and have like turn-by-turn directions, holography, up on my car windshield and stuff like that. Then, like maybe I'll be less cranky. It'll feel like less of a you're taking things away from me kind of situation. So this week, I also put out a video on a product that I think is pretty cool. And this is the Stylo pen. This is a company called Stylo. And this is a very simple product, but it does something that I don't think there are too many other gadgets on the market. And this is a powered fine tip capacitive stylus. And it interacts with any capacitive touchscreen. So it doesn't have, it's not pressure sensitive. And it's it's accurate. It's the most accurate capacitive stylus that I've ever played with. And so I put out a review on it, and most of the comments were very positive, like, oh, I've been wanting something like that, or I've been needing something like that. And there aren't a lot of solutions in the marketplace for that. And it's based on something super, super simple in that if you have an electrical current that can interact with a capacitive screen, just like if you dump water on a capacitive screen, you can't use your finger to swipe on that screen anymore. It interrupts whatever is going on with the screen. Same thing, like you can take a AAA battery and technically use that as a stylus. So this is sort of that same concept, only in much nicer build. It's got a power button, even has an adjustable nub. So you can change the sensitivity of the stylus by screwing this up or down. And like I said, most of the comments were super positive, but I did get one from one of my subscribers by the name of Snowmation. Snowmation writes, for what is basically a powered capacitive stylus, the price is way too high. The Surface Pro 3's pen is like $50 and much less on Amazon. And that is a proper active stylus. I mean, this thing comes very close to Apple's Pencil Money, which has the Apple Tax price point. And then we had a back and forth, probably another 4 or 5 comments on either side. And you can catch the conversation under that video for the Stylo pen review if you're so inclined. And I don't mean to pick on Snowmation here, but this is one of those conversations. This is one of those talking points that we geeks bring up a lot, the worth it conversation. And I find it's one that can be very toxic to how we talk about gadgets and technologies. Because again, worth it is based on feelers. This is how I feel about some. My feelers say that this is too expensive. But the realities of actually building out a product, testing that product, building a company around shipping that product, manufacturing that product, packaging that product, advertising that product, and putting it out in people's hands are all factored into the cost. It's why it's so upsetting whenever we see those bogus headlines. For again, we're gonna make this kind of an Apple day. The phone, I think the phone that gets picked on the most for this is usually the iPhone. Oh my God, such and such company has broken down all of the parts inside the iPhone, and it only costs $200 to make an iPhone. They're just gouging us. All they care about are profits. Well, yeah, they're a corporation. They're not your friend. But that's also not true. If this is really $200 worth of parts, it doesn't take into account the team of designers that had to work on putting all of these parts together. All of those people need to get paid. It doesn't account for the enormous team of software engineers that made all of the custom software for it. It doesn't account for all of the designers that had to work on the packaging. It doesn't account for the retail chain that Apple has to have in order for these products to be properly shipped and supported and maintained. It doesn't account for the fact that these things do need to be produced in giant factories. We can talk about how we feel about Chinese labor on maybe a future podcast, but that costs money. And it also doesn't account for the amazing retail chains that Apple has built on the ground, hiring employees to very easily and quickly maintenance their own products. So all of that has to go into paying for and supporting a product. It's not just, oh, so I can buy all the parts of an iPhone for like $200. You still can't make one. I mean, unless you've got a really amazingly cheap way to forge your own aluminum casing. And you can also pay for things like getting your own FCC radio certifications in place, having those products tested in a quick fashion. That's still, all of those things need to go and be factored into the price of the device. And so I got a little spiky in my replies to Snowmation because I don't like it when I can't find another product out on the market. So here's the thing. I liked Stylo Pen, and I gave this a very positive review, but it is a $70 stylus. The Apple Pencil is going to be a $99 stylus. And so, this is getting really close, and it's arguably not as functional as the relationship of Apple Pencil to iPad Pro. But I don't have to rebuy a phone or tablet to use the stylo. I don't have to buy a Note or, what was the NVIDIA Shield tablet or a Surface. So to compare, to compare the Surface Pro 3 stylus to this stylus has to do everything all on its own: power management, the adjustability of the sensitivity of the point, the ability to swap a battery, and it's in a really nice form factor, and it's got a nice satiny soft touch finish, and it's very well balanced. So they did a good job of balancing the AAA battery against the rest of the pen. And then they had to mass produce it, package it, ship it out, and they have to support their product. So all of those things cost money. I don't know that we can get down to a powered, nice stylus for every smartphone much beyond that price point, not have it be properly supported. And so that was my point. And unfortunately, we kind of got into this back and forth. It was like, but I just think it's going to be too expensive. I feel it's too expensive. And then I would say, well, what about this? And with this whole retail chain, it's like, well, yeah, but it's too expensive. And we would just really sort of worked at an impasse where, well, you're not going to convince me, so we're just going to agree to disagree. Like, well, you didn't really ever address any of my points. And like I said, I don't mean to pick on Snowmation. He's actually, Snowmation, he or she, I actually don't know the gender of Snowmation, has left a ton of really cool comments on my channel. So I'm not trying to badmouth him. But it has come up sort of a number of times recently with some other products I reviewed, like Kumba Cam, that smartphone stabilizer. It's expensive. It's a $300 stabilizer, but it's not a selfie stick. It's a pro-grade video stabilizing device for your smartphone. So again, we're comparing it against like a $20 gas station selfie stick. It's the wrong comparison. If we're comparing this against the really crappy, like you can go and on Amazon get a $5 stick with a really inaccurate nubby rubber tip that doesn't always recognize at different angles, and it's kind of tricky to use, and it will stutter across your screen if the screen and rubber don't play well together. Again, something which gives you like ballpoint pen precision and will do it to any phone. If you have an LG G4, well, that doesn't have an active digitizer in it. So the price of an LG G4 and the stylo is almost $300 cheaper than a Note 5. So is that worth it? Is that worth it for the monies? If we're going to compare, well, the Note 5 stylus is only $30 and you can get that replaced really easily. Well, that's not really the whole story. You still have to have the phone that has the active digitizer in it. Whereas this will work on anything. So like I said, I was frustrated in the conversation. I think I let my frustrations out a little too much in talking about what I thought was appropriate pricing. And again, I hate getting into that conversation of whether or not something's worth it for the monies. I like telling you what features worked, what features didn't, and you guys can decide how you want to spend your money on products. My personal bias will help to inform how I feel about something, but really the capabilities of the device should stand on their own. Not, well, this worked really well, but I don't think you should buy it because I think it's too expensive. Well, what's the alternative? The alternative is crap, or the alternative is amazing if you rebuy a whole bunch of technology. So I don't think that's an appropriate thing for me to suggest for my audience. If they come to me looking for a good stylus for a phone that doesn't have stylus support, I've got a solution. It's a little expensive, but it's a good solution. So anyway, so that was a stylo pen review. I also put out this week, I finally got around to putting out my LG G4 versus Galaxy S6 Edge Plus comparison video, comparing the current LG flagship, although we're getting ready for a new LG announcement. I'm actually really excited. I like the direction LG is headed with their current crop of smartphones. I know they're not hitting as hard as Samsung. I know they're not they're not making up the same market share that they have in years past, but the G4 has been a great phone for me. So I'm becoming really excited to see a company that's hungry for some competition and doing that by retaining some of the features that I really care about, like micro SD card expansion, amazing cameras. So I had a couple more comments on this. There are a ton of comments on the comparison between the G4 and the Edge Plus. The first one was from D. Sean, and D. Sean writes, LG uses plastic, no one says nothing. Samsung uses plastic, everyone complains. F y'all, buy a Samsung, haters. So first of all, this is I felt compelled to respond to this comment because we get really sensitive about the brands we like. We're not nearly as sensitive about brands that are kind of irrelevant to us. I'm a Red Sox fan. When people talk trash about the Red Sox, that blips on my radar immediately. When someone talks trash about the Orioles, I don't care. When someone's talking trash about any other baseball team, like someone's talking trash about the Mets or like, Chicago, like, well, I just think, that's tacky. You're just kicking a team while they're down, but it's not blip. It's not like, bam, defend. And so again, when we look at some of the way that criticism happens, and Samsung is a very high profile target, they are the highest profile target for criticism in the Android ecosystem, which means you're going to see a lot of people criticizing their products as well as you're going to see a lot of people praising their products. LG is a much lower visibility company, but when you really do analyze the breakup on things that people have praised about LG phones and things that people have criticized about LG phones, you're going to see sort of the same dichotomy in things that people like and things that people don't. It's just going to be a much lower volume. A lot of people have complained about plastic on the LG, so much so that on the current LG, you can get a leather back for the phone. Why? Because we all kind of took a shot on the way that the plastic felt on the G3, and LG responded to that. That's the way this should work. If I have an issue with a product and I raise that issue up with my audience and we kind of say, like, oh yeah, that is kind of a bummer. Why did they do that? Or why can't we have this? If that affects sales, then the company's going to respond to those concerns. And that's how we make our product. That's one of the ways that we make our products better. The other being more competition between these companies directly. So, Deshaun, I can totally appreciate where, again, with Samsung being the higher profile, you're probably hearing that noise more. But it's not to say that other companies haven't been criticized. And it's not to say that because we criticize a company like Samsung that we just haters, yo. So I appreciate the sentiment, but definitely look around. I think a little bit more nuanced examination of the tech landscape, and you'll see that basically every tech company out there has fans and detractors. That's kind of where we're all at. To the other token, I got a comment to that other token. That's not a saying. I'm really just, I'm barely holding this one together, folks. It's like everything I can do to not like just go drink another cup of coffee because I'm totally strung out right now. John Travisano writes, a glass-backed phone is pretty for sure, but is it a good idea? I'm getting an LG G4 as soon as I sell off my LG G3. And especially if you're coming from a G3, the G4 actually seems like a good step in the right direction. I would maybe hold off just to see what LG announces with this rumored G4 Pro. We got teaser commentary. We got teasers from LG last week talking. It had a little movie clapper, the slate board. So I'm thinking there are probably going to be some updates to video features, movie making features. I would love to see a company like LG put out their own video editor, because I still think the best video editor was on Windows Phone, and I don't even know if that's going to be compatible with Windows 10 handsets, and that's a bummer. Movie Creator Beta on Microsoft phones was phenomenal. And the next very, very close second would be iMovie, and the Android ecosystem has Squat for a really solid, stable, you can carve it up, you can choose clips, you can really mash things together and re-render a high-quality video file. Android's got nothing. So it's been disappointing. So maybe if LG brings something to the table that could be really cool in their phones, I don't know. I don't know what we're going to get, but it's rumored we could get a G4 Pro or a G4 Note or something like that. Maybe a G4 made out of metal with a stylus. That could be really cool. So I'm curious to see, because again, I think out of all of the players right now, LG seems hungriest for like a really good fight, and they're trying to take it to Samsung. Moving to an older video. Again, it's funny how some of my videos, because it's not like I'm the biggest YouTuber ever. I'm about to break 30,000 subscribers, and that means like with the number of videos that I put out, when someone finds my channel, it's just as likely to be a new video as an older one. And for whatever reason, my review of the Kyocera Brigadier has been sort of refinding a whole new slate of traffic. People are finding this review now. It got a surge in, and I can't find from where. I mean, I'm going through my analytics tools. I don't know why or how people are finding this review, but people seem really lit up about talking about a year-old mid-range phone today. But I got this comment from Brian Maroney. I actually don't know how that's pronounced, but he writes, I'm a fire investigator for a large city fire department. I agree wholeheartedly with this review. I've been in situations where the phone was pulled out of a puddle and used immediately afterward. No scratches of any kind on the display after a year and a half of rugged use. The only noticeable problems are with the camera and the focusing on it. Other than that, it gets a big thumbs up from this guy. And the Brigadier, and this is something I was actually talking to an AT&T exec about today, where phones like the Brigadier ushered in lifestyle features. I did an interview with KNX here in Southern California, one of the AM radio talk news stations. This is a good media day for me. I'm looking like a big shot today, talking to TV news and talk radio news. And here's this tech expert who's hanging out at 5 a.m. at an AT&T store talk about the iPhone. But I really feel like the technology is sort of plateauing, right? Our phones are definitely getting more powerful, but battery issues are always going to be a concern. Power management issues are always going to be a concern. We're always going to have to find some compromise between just, raw horsepower and being able to make it through a day. But one of the areas that I still think we have plenty of room to move on would be lifestyle durability features. Things like whether or not we're going to start using sapphire as the main screen material, because I think that's a more durable screen. The Brigadier screen handles real abuse, intentional abuse, far better than any other phone I've ever played with. And when you know that Apple has been building out their camera lenses with sapphire, it would only make sense to me that at some point we actually just move that to the front of the phone, and now we have a phone that's far less scratchable. So, and this also kind of goes hand in hand with, sort of a little celebratory, fist bump to all the firefighters out there, because my uncle is a retired firefighter. And so, fancies himself kind of rugged dude, always drives an SUV. He's down in Orange County fighting fires because he's a manly man, big old barrel chested dude. And so, of course, the phone that he got was the Kyocera Brigadier. And then he put a case on it. So he's got a rugged phone in a rugged case. It's like this thing was just a monster brick of like, oh, watch, I can just throw it at people. Even if I miss, it's not going to break the phone at all. He's just loving it. This is so funny. But I totally see that needs to be a much bigger discussion on gadgets and technologies moving forward. Every time I show a rugged phone to a parent, they get really lit up about a phone that they don't have to worry as much if their kids get goopy stuff all over the screen, because you can just run it under a sink and wash it off. If it gets dropped in a toilet, it's a bummer, but you can clean it out. You're not going to have to worry about water damage. If it takes a tumble down the stairs, it's going to be more likely to survive. Those things are very valuable. So as much as you might have the camera with the most megapixels, or you might have the processor with the most giggle flips, you might not be able to use those giggle flips or megapixels if your phone takes a tumble out of a cab into a puddle in a New York street. Like, your phone could be dead. Now, where do all those megapixels and giggle flips get you? Nowhere. That's where, because your phone's dead. Meh. So that, to me, and again, why I like to share some of those comments, especially when we're talking about phones like the Brigadier. Brigadier wasn't anything super special as a phone, but it had a whole bunch of really cool lifestyle technologies. It was built with this really thick, rugged casing. It had a huge battery built into it, and then it had that sapphire screen. All of the things that made sure the phone would make it through the day, survive the day, and then make sure you could get phone calls and text messages conveniently. That thing was a baller device. And I really hope to see Kyocera follow it up with something just as exciting, because it's getting on to be a year and a half old, and we haven't heard about a follow-up phone from Kyocera. I would love to see them do like a Brigadier too. So real quick, I'm going to look through comments. Got one from Mike Beard. And going back to Samsung, what Samsung is doing is making an Apple move, which may actually pay off for them. Even though tech is getting more advanced, it's also getting easier to use, which opens up doors for non-techies to use phones like the Note and not need to understand it. And I don't disagree. I think where we get a little angsty is we were used to features like IR blasters and memory cards on the Note 4. And so to make the phone simpler for regular people, they took away features that we geeks care about, right? That's why we get angsty. I feel like if there were other commiserate new technologies that really expanded on the experience of using a phablet, we probably wouldn't be this cranky. You're like, oh, it's kind of a bummer, but man, we got augmented reality or, something. I keep going back to AR because that's what I'm really hyped up about, hopefully being the next phase in how we visually interact with data. But it's also, I get a little, I told that story of the person who was trading in a Note this morning for an iPhone. And I do think that companies need to do a better job of explaining in the gadget, what some of those capabilities and what some of those features are, Like if that woman had known that her Note 4 could just expand the storage whenever she wanted and for cheap, she might not have felt as pressing an urge to just jump, launch day for an iPhone. Right? So Samsung missed out on an opportunity there. They had this woman's money. She gave them money for a phone. And then they sort of abandoned her as a company, as a customer. As a company, they kind of walked away from her. They didn't keep a conversation going, which was going to be relevant for what she wanted. And there she was buying a 64 gigabyte iPhone. So those are those opportunities they feel companies miss because they take sort of a broad look at the market and then they oversimplify some things. Like, oh, well, most customers don't even use the memory card slot. That's not because customers are making a concerted effort to ignore that feature. It's because a good chunk of them don't even know they can do that. And why? Because they talk to their family and friends who use competing devices like iPhones that can't upgrade the storage. And it just never really crosses their mind to dig that deep into the specs and guts of their phone. That's not on them. That's on Samsung. So I feel it's a missed opportunity on Samsung's part to really diversify, to really show why their phones are different or better. Sure, you can put out a snarky commercial that someone's going to TiVo through, just fast forward through. But if you're not really interacting with the customer beyond that, then yeah, they're going to walk away from your company because they don't feel you're giving them anything special that they can't get from some other company. And then Stephen Ayers also replies to talking about getting into like fights with people on Facebook. I've lost family members on Facebook, giving them the same attitude they give me. Most people can't take what they dish out. Not only do I completely agree, I'll also be the first one to raise my hand and say, dude, I'm totally guilty of that too. If we're having this sort of heart to heart over my podcast talking about our good intentions and how we can maybe, make tech discussion more inclusive, I'll also be the first one to say like, hey man, I'll get spiky and I'll fight you because I love to debate. So let's spar, let's fight. But yeah, it really is frustrating, especially because my wife and I joke about us having an overly developed sense of fair play. We were both the first children in our families, the eldest child. And so, like we would do something and parents would be like, oh, no, you can't do that until you're older. Then our siblings would do things and you're like, oh, but that's okay because they're your siblings. And you're like, no, but you wouldn't let me do. No, you gave me response. You made me do chores when I was 6. How come my 6-year-old brother doesn't have chores? It's not fair. And then I've got a comment from Adi 2200 US. And Adi writes, "You can criticize my Samsung. You are right. It's crap." And that's a bummer. That's a bummer, Adi. I'm sorry to hear that. It never. There's never any joy. Man, I actually had a comment from a woman who got the Note 5 and has just not been enjoying the experience on the Note 5. I got another comment from someone who recently picked up. It was like an iPhone 5S. They were on a budget. They just needed. They wanted an iPhone. They got the 5S. We can say rationally as tech fans, like, oh, well, you shouldn't have gotten that if those are the features you cared about. Again, not on the customer. That's not on the customer. That's on the company not properly delineating who their product is for. And why I had such a hard time reviewing the Galaxy S6 Edge Plus. A really hard time recommending what demographic of people should buy that phone. It seems a little overly simplistic to say people who want a pretty phone and have a lot of money to spend. That's tacky. I don't want to make that comment because there's probably someone out there where that feature set on the Edge Plus is spot on perfect. That is the perfect productivity, get my work done during the day phone for them. I just don't know who that person is, and I'm usually really good at playing that game. So I'm talking to this woman who's having a hard time with the Note 5, and I'm talking to this dude who's having a hard time with his iPhone 5S, and there's no joy in that. I mean, I almost feel like I should be apologizing for these companies at this point because these people got products that weren't right for them, that they weren't the right fit for them. I'm trying to express, like, oh, maybe you can try this, or maybe you can try and fix that, or maybe you can do these things. And it's just like, I can just feel myself like digging deeper and deeper and deeper into like, just being really bummed out on their behalf. This is what we work to try and prevent. This is what we work so hard to avoid. If you guys are anything like me watching this podcast, anytime you have to spend money, you probably agonize. You probably go into information paralysis over what features and what compromises and what pros and what cons, and can I get a sale on it? Can I get it on sale, or can I get accessories for it? So to go through all of that angst, to go through all of that purchasing decision indecision, and then to get the gadget home and it not scratch the itch is so messed up. I like, my heart goes out to those people regardless of what gadget they got. So Adi 2200 US, if you're not digging your Samsung, I'm feeling for you, and all I can say is I hope you're able to flip it and sell it, maybe go get something you do like, or for your next phone, or if it's on an upgrade plan, that you can land something that you do like, because this technology goodness is all around us. We just have to find the tool that's the right fit for us. So yeah, it is. It's a serious bummer, and I wish there were better tools for me to help curb it, because even just my reviews are sort of inadequate to properly express what it's like to use these gadgets over a long period of time. Like I'm playing with the Galaxy S6 Active. It's one of my favorite Samsungs. I'm playing with the LG G4, and I can do a video every month. I can do a video every 6 months. I can do another little summation, and maybe 5,000 people are going to watch it, or maybe 30,000 people are going to watch it, and it still won't. You still won't walk away with what that experience was when I picked up my camera and I nailed an amazing shot at sunset, or I picked up my phone and it locked up while I was trying to get turn-by-turn directions. Like, I can't really give you that sensation. I can't really give you that feeling, what this thing really was like to use, but I can try and express it, and I can try and sum it up, and I can try and share it. And that's really the best we can do. And then beyond that, it's just, man, we just got to take the jump. You got to take the jump and then stop paying attention to tech bloggers so that we don't, get super upset when we buy a new piece of technology and then an even newer piece of technology comes out immediately after. So I've got one other. So this is from Miguel B. And he writes, I have a non-tech question. What do you think about the rubbish attitude some people have towards the pink color thing? Many people trying to convince themselves that it's not a pink color because they don't believe it's a gender-oriented phone, as if colors and genders had anything to do. Or as if femininity or female gender was wrong, or as if a guy having a pink phone was necessarily homosexual. And again, implying there's something wrong with that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Do you think Apple used rose gold naming to avoid gender-oriented refusal? And sorry for the long comment. Miguel, never apologize for a long comment. That's why I produce this podcast. I would not be able to continue producing this podcast without that. That's a really interesting discussion. One, I do think rose gold and sort of this pinkish rose gold, but we're still calling it rose gold, was brought up to sort of soften the impact of whether or not someone might own this phone based on some of those gender preferences. And especially in the United States, we have this fascination with boys dress in blue and girls dress in pink and douchebag frat boys dress in pink. There are a couple market forces at play that I think are really interesting, and I don't have a great response to completely answering your question because I'm sort of on the spot and I'm doing this live. But I do have I do feel, as we're looking at who is purchasing technology and what markets we still have left to tap, I think the tech industry in the past has done a terrible job of providing technology solutions for women. More often, they are the same styles of technology that we sort of just generally use in the ecosystem, and then they slap a funky color on it. I think it was HTC, I might be wrong here, who had a phone that was basically just some regular mid-range Android phone, but they colored it lavender and they plugged a charm bracelet charm on it, and that was a phone for women. And I find that to be horrifically insulting to 50% of the population who are capable of making informed purchasing decisions for themselves, as if we're treating women as if they're idiots that only respond to sparkly, jangly things. So we have these commentaries of whether or not the tech industry is inclusive to women, or if it's inherently misogynist, or however we want to address very complicated dynamics between companies and genders. But I am at least happy to see that as technology has become more mass market, that technology has become more fashionable. Smartwatches look a lot cooler this year than they did 3 years ago, right? Smartphones are becoming more organically looking and shaped and designed, softer edged, rounded corners, really cool, pretty lines and features. And I think this is holding true not just for, I'm holding up an iPhone, but for a number of phones out in the marketplace and out in the ecosystem. Tech has become fashionable. Successful tech, more fashionable. And so I think that just brings in a wider audience base in general. But I also think that should make some of this discussion a little less standoffish. It's not just we painted one pink, so now it's good for girls. There is a legitimate choice in what style you wish to show off with the iPhone. There's gold, there's silver, there's space gray, and now there's this new rose gold pink color. Do I think men are going to gravitate towards that? Probably not. I really do think we have a lot of gender constructs in this country where men are going to walk away from the pink iPhone because it's the pink iPhone. And then I do think that some of this discussion, like I said earlier in the video, is hinged on an idea of exclusivity. And so you want it to feel like there's something limited. So previous years never had this pink color. This year we're introducing the pink color. And so if you want to feel like you're on the pulse, if you want to feel like you're a current member of the club, the pink iPhone is for you, because that will send a clear signal that you bought this year's iPhone. And again, I think that's all psychology. I think that's all media. I think that's all marketing. And I think some men are going to go for it. But I think predominantly this is also a move designed to draw more women into this tech space, into this consumer space. So I can't necessarily speak exactly to the question that you had, but I do feel like there's a lot of marketing and there's a lot of messaging. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing that women and fashion savvy men, be they straight or gay, might be embracing just the fact that we have a legitimately new color option for this phone. You know, I mean, like it really shouldn't be a big deal if our phones come in different colors. You know, like Nokia devices used to come in a rainbow, and I think it's going to be a little sad if the next Windows phone is only available in black and white. I miss when the 920 came out and we had, a candy apple glossy red, and we had that matte finish cyan, we had the electric neon yellow, we had black, we had white, we had some limited edition colors. The 1520 came out in Hulk neon green. I want choice. I don't want my choices to be defined by gender. If I want to sport a pink phone, I'm going to sport a pink phone. But I want to have an option of colors, and not just like I can buy a case for it. I want the phones themselves to actually represent the design, which complements my style. So thank you very much for the long comment, Miguel. And I feel I've delivered an appropriately long response. And I've got one more live question here from, live question from David Cornelius. David writes, I'm really deep into the Microsoft ecosystem, and I'm pining to see what's next. Delicious word. I love the word pining. It's the sort of wistful and hopeful expectation and anticipation, the anxiousness of what's to come, but in a really romantic way. Beautiful word, pining. It's your word of the day. Are you hoping to see something new on October 6th? Absolutely. I have a plane ticket to New York booked and ready. I'm going to be there. I am going to try and show off Microsoft stuff for that press event. We could be looking at new Surfaces. We could be looking at new Windows phones, new Windows 10 devices. I'm super excited because while Microsoft is not is not like a major competitor in smartphones, they're a distant third place. This game gets more interesting when we have a third place competitor. So if Microsoft, using that old Nokia Lumia hardware team, can give us something interesting, it's going to help sort of drive the market forward. It's going to expand on the Microsoft ecosystem. The Surface Pro, or actually the Surface brand in general, is $1 billion brand now. And we want to see progress on that. Because for as much as companies like Apple might talk about reinventing the laptop, Apple's very conservative in how they change up their products over time. Microsoft needed to do something radical because they had no tablet solution and their smartphone solution wasn't very competitive. So now we have an opportunity to see them kind of reinvest in their ecosystem. I'm a little worried because this next Windows 10 phone will probably need a little time to build up momentum in the market. And I'm afraid that they're going to release this phone. It's not going to instantly sell amazing because we haven't had a flagship for a long time. We had the Lumia Icon only on Verizon. Then we had the 1520. We had a bunch of mid-range and entry-level phones. So the United States market especially has been sort of starved of a high-end flagship device for a while now. Maybe even going back to the 1020. No, that was an AT&T exclusive for most people too. So I'm afraid that what we're going to see is Microsoft put out this phone. It's not going to instantly sell amazing. It's not going to be like a top 5 phone. And then they're going to back off. And I feel that's the wrong response because they keep doing this thing. They put out a phone, they put out a second phone, then they kind of back off. Put out Windows Phone 7, the Lumia 900, the Lumia 800. They had I think there was an HTC, the Surround, the one with the speaker on. I mean, some really interesting, innovative designs. And then they backed off. And then they had to come up with Windows 8, and that wasn't compatible with Windows Phone 7. So a lot of people that had started building apps or started investing in Windows Phone had to then restart with Windows Phone 8. And the same thing happened. Windows Phone 8, we started building a lot on low-end phones, entry-level phones. There was some positive, discussion on high-end flagship Microsoft phones. It never really took off, and then they kind of just cooled all of that off while we waited for Windows 10. And then Windows 10 for phones took longer than I think any of us really anticipated it would take to get to this point. We're now 2 years without a flagship. And that's a long time for developers to continue staying interested in the platform, if there was any interest from developers in the platform. So, David Cornelius, that is another long and rambling explanation. I'm super excited. I'm super stoked. I want to be there. I want to play with these things. I want to see what Microsoft does next. So I think they've got an excellent potential for tying together an ecosystem that Apple and Google can't do. They have a unique slate of products and services that could be very compelling. They just need to keep some more pressure on their product lines, and I think we could get something really, really cool out of it. So lastly, I do have one last comment. This kind of ties into wrapping up this video, and this comes from Tom's Test Kitchen, because I also put out a video yesterday. Big fan of the Loot Crate, And Tom's Test Kitchen writes, I loved this month's Loot Crate. Big fan of Supernatural, so I loved the car. It came with a little mini Impala from Supernatural. Big fan of Supernatural. I had to dig out the foil packaging for the Homer Buddha because I didn't notice the pretzel and the pearls. I love augmented reality apps. It's so cool. Best box design yet. And so you can see over my shoulder, that little cardboard box over there is supposed to look like a book. And the cats at Loot Crate put together an augmented reality app. This may be one of the reasons. This is okay. So in my psychological, let's put things and ideas together. This is one of the reasons why I'm so excited about augmented reality, because I kind of been playing with it recently. But just to do a silly little fun game for their Loot Crates, they put together an augmented reality app. So you put together this book and you can summon a monster which stomps around in a city on top of that book through your phone screen. You can shoot little missiles at the town, and it's really well done. You can turn the book side to side, and the augmented reality app will move the city based on the orientation of the book. And you're like, if you can do that for a Loot Crate, imagine what we could do if we could start building in some of that technology into things like turn-by-turn navigation or your camera sensor for overlays of information and how we interact with monuments. You want to travel, you want to go see some tourist stuff. And, we already have the beginnings of some of that tech, but I mean, really pushing forward into a much more cohesive data-enabled experience for how we interact with everything. Our sixth sense is already data. We might as well expand on that. It doesn't really matter what glowing rectangle we use to interact with it. We should be able to start feeding more data to our natural senses without blocking our natural senses. So Tom's Test Kitchen, I agree, and I had a lot of fun with this month's Loot Crate. And really, I think we should wrap up this video. Again, this is going to be a crazy couple days. I'm going to be running through as much iPhone news as I can. I know I'm going to be getting the full review out. The camera review is going to be shot today and tomorrow. The speaker test I'm probably going to try and do tonight so we can hear audio samples from the bottom firing speaker on the iPhone 6S. And then I've got to wrap that stuff up because immediately after that, we're going to start talking about LG news for the new G4 Pro, whatever it's going to be called, coming out soon. And then we're into Microsoft, Windows 10 gear, new Windows 10 devices. So the next couple of weeks are actually going to be pretty busy, pretty exciting. And I know you guys are all going to be along for the ride. I can absolutely not continue producing stuff on this channel. So thank you so much for watching. Because if you're not participating on this channel, if you're not leaving me comments, if we're not getting into discussions, if we're not getting into conversations, then one, I'm just gonna get bored. I'm gonna start doing something else with my copious amounts of free time. But then also it's like legitimately, this is the community of people that I have tried to cultivate or tried to find on other places. And really, you guys all came to me. And we are now having much more interesting technology conversations because of it, where we're focused on nuance. We're not always just playing the fanboy game, but I think it's the best and everything else sucks. And that's dull. That's dumb. And that's going to get in the way of how we talk about these things in the future. So I'm so happy for all the people that have found this channel and have participated. And I can't continue producing on this channel if you're not participating. Also talk about sponsors. Thank you for Tom's Test Kitchen bringing up Loot Crate, because Loot Crate has been sponsoring this channel and this show for a while now. Loot Crate is that geek and gamer box service. You can buy yourself a cool box full of stuff. It's like $20 with shipping, and they pick a theme, and each month's theme, there's stuff in the box, and it's toys or collectibles or novelty t-shirts. Some of my favorite t-shirts have come from a Loot Crate. And I can save you some cash on a Loot Crate if you use the promo code SGLOOT at checkout. There's a link down below this video. You can sign up for a Loot Crate. You have a lot of fun with that. And the new sponsor this week is Audible. So if you hook yourself up with a free audiobook on me, use that link down below this video. You get a free audiobook from Audible. Sign you up for a 30-day trial. If you decide you don't want to do business with Audible at the end of your 30-day trial, that audiobook is still yours. I mean, why would you not? I mean, it's free. Free is great. And you can sign up, and by signing up for that free trial, you're still supporting the show, and you're getting yourself something cool. So it's a win-win for both of us. Super exciting. I'm super happy to have Audible on board because my wife is a huge audiobook fan, and she actually does do all of her audiobook listening through the Audible service. And yeah, it's definitely been something that we've come to love here in this household. So we're readers, but she's got an hour each way commute to get to her job. So she can't come home and then start reading a book. She's using audiobooks now to kind of fulfill that thirst for new literature. So many major thanks to Audible for now supporting and sponsoring this podcast and my entire YouTube channel. And lastly, you can always hit the fan funding. If you'd like to support this channel directly, there's going to be a little pop out at the top of your screen once this video renders, and you can support that by clicking on that and just give monies directly, which will help keep the lights on here at Some Gadget Guy. But lastly, I think the most important way that you can support this channel, if you're so inclined, is by sharing these videos with your friends on your favorite social services like Facebook and Twitter and Reddit and the Google's Plus. And like I said, I can't do it without you, so please keep bringing more cool people to the party. Thanks so much for all the comments, for all the questions. You're gonna see some cool videos coming out from me very, very soon. The most comprehensive camera review from the iPhone will be done in a couple days, so be on the lookout for that. Hit that thumbs up button, and I will catch you all on the next podcast.